All right. I think we're going to jump in here in the interest of trying to finish right on time, if not a little bit early. Welcome everybody who is here in person and everybody who is online. I really appreciate your attendance. This is counting for our new instructors as your onboarding for the department, your content training, and this counts for our returning instructors as our continuing PD. So let's make sure before I start rambling on here, there's a stipend paperwork underneath your packets of the courses. I'll collect those at the end. I'll just use that as attendance. That gets everybody credit for being here and then gets you paid. People that are in the Zoom room, I will send the stipend paperwork out to you guys tomorrow. I've got a list of the online people, and then you guys can fill out that paperwork electronically, send it back to me. We can make sure everybody showed up, got what they needed to out of it, and got paid for the experience. Okay, jumping right in. I'm pressing hard. All right, of course it works when you come up here. Okay, all right, the agenda. I doubt that I'm gonna speak for 10 minutes, but I'm slated for, 7 minutes right now. Quick bunch of CE updates, and then I'm going to turn it over to the people from the ELWS department, course creators and stuff. They're gonna talk briefly about the new courses that we've seen and that we're going to be using next year, and then we have time for a Q&A after that. So we'll see how long that all goes. Okay, just a quick thank you from me and a couple of positives and negatives. This is my first year being the humanities liaison and the English liaison. I took over from my predecessor and he was good at his job and I enjoyed working with him. I have felt Wade's presence this entire year where I'm going to high schools. One thing that I always felt about Wade was that when he left my room, I felt really empowered to teach what I was teaching, that I was doing a good job. And he was really zen in giving me that. I don't ever remember a lot of feedback from Wade, but I always felt good when he left the room. And so I was trying to reproduce that as much as possible when I came into your rooms, and everybody's been really accommodating and really nice over the course of this year as I'm learning this new position. And you remember your first year as a high school teacher, how it was maybe a dumpster fire? Mine was. The liaison thing can kind of be the same at different times. And so thank you for dealing with me for this first year as I'm getting my feet wet. Okay, couple of positives and negatives. So I've seen a lot of stuff. I've done about 100 class observations this year, a lot of driving all around the valley. I'm gonna start with some negatives, some things that I've learned this year. If you've ever had a principal come into your room or VP and they're doing an observation and your TV or projector doesn't work, and you thought it was anecdotal, it just must be me, that is not the case. It is actually trackable data. Every time I go into a room, it's like 1 out of 3 times something doesn't work for the teachers. And it's almost like comical. We actually redid our observation form and included language that says the instructor adjusts appropriately to unforeseen circumstances because it is so common that this happens. It's a nightmare for some of you guys. Let's see, Debbie Ricks. I went into her room not that long ago at Cottonwood, and her smartboard had been unplugged by the janitorial staff. And it didn't just have to be turned on again, it had to be rebooted. And it took 30 minutes to reboot the smart board. And she did a really good job with, but it was super stressful. And I don't know, the second appointment I ever did was Kirsty Barlow at Jordan High. And 10 minutes into my second appointment, the fire alarm goes off. And she has an outside door, but if that outside door isn't open quickly enough, the other outside door opens and locks it so you can't get out. So we were stuck in the room during a fire drill. She dealt really well with that. Also, I have learned negatively that if you teach at a school on the east side of the valley, especially the northeast end of the valley, east, west, Judge, I don't know how you get to work in the morning. If I have a first period observation at Judge Memorial High School, I should park in Sugar House Park and just hike in. There's no parking anywhere. It's brutal. You guys do a good job getting there. Negatives. Positives. It's been a fun year of doing all these observations and learning this new gig. My favorite part is the creativity. I've really enjoyed seeing a whole bunch of different smart teachers do interesting things in their classrooms with the same sorts of objectives and goals. Gardner's here. Gardner. I loved your propaganda thing you threw at your students the other day. I would have never attempted that. I wouldn't have thought they would come up with good conclusions about rhetoric right out the gate with that. And it was fun, and they did, and it was this cool class, and everybody was having interesting things to say. I love that. Let's see, Matt Panchenza at Judge. Matt talks to his students like he's hanging out and having coffee with them. And it's the most, I don't know, invigorating thing to see. He started his class by just like talking about comedy clubs. And they had this like conversation about wise guys. And he was like, you guys ever been to a comedy club? They're 18. They've never been to a comedy club. And he just like had this cool conversation about comedians and whatever. And it felt really authentic and like an actual college sort of experience. Chandra, I saw you come in. Yeah. She has a Zen den in her classroom. This isn't really like content related, but she has a little office that she turned into a blue light room with a fountain and rugs and chairs and everything. And so after you have your observation in her class, you get to go in and like hang out in this like scented room. And so it was just fun to see a whole bunch of creative people being creative and bringing different things to this, this pursuit that we're all engaged in. All right, let's jump in. CE specific things. I got a couple things I want to mention that relate to what's happening right now in your classrooms and a couple things that are going to relate to what's going to happen next year in your classrooms. Okay, first thing, if I came into your room this year, I completed a college experience evaluation for you. You got a notification that said, go in, check it out, give it some feedback, and then put it, like certify it, put it in your file. If you have yet to complete that, please make sure you go in and do that. Otherwise, they're kind of like a pending thing forever. And my director gets really stressed out and thinks that you guys aren't paying attention. So go in those, give some feedback to it, certify it if you can, if you haven't done that already. English teachers are pretty good about that. Math teachers are terrible about that. Okay, another thing, SharePoint, Digication. So we've talked about this. I've emailed you a few times about this. My director has as well. Make sure nobody's making any new Digication e-portfolios for your classes. If they have one, they can continue to use it if they've made it for a previous course, but from now on, and hopefully this year, you've been making SharePoint e-portfolios instead. They're gonna stop paying for Digication, and students will be kind of hung out to dry, so we wanna make sure they're using the new format. I didn't ever love Digication. I didn't think it was super intuitive. I think SharePoint is more intuitive. It's always a struggle to get my students, your students, everybody's students, e-portfolios up and running, but make sure we're making them in SharePoint. That'd be another this year and moving forward update. Okay, this next one's kind of big. We've done pilot testing on this. So they've made, I think it's a significant change. So instead of doing syllabus review, where you guys, for every one of your classes, have to upload a syllabus through MyCE every time you teach it, we're gonna do course review instead. So there's no more syllabus review next year. What my department did was we went to all the major districts and we got access to your districts. All the liaisons have been added to districts, which means I can go into Murray or Canyons or Jordan's Canvas system and I can see people's courses as they actually exist. If I see your syllabus, I get this tiny little snapshot. If I see your actual course, I get a much clearer view of what's going on, and it's way more organic and easy for me to see the information that's going on in there. So anyways, we're gonna be in your courses where we have access to your courses instead of just a syllabus, so you don't have to upload stuff. And for some courses, it seems like we're automatically in, and then in other ones, you may get an email asking for you to add me to the course as a TA. Whatever the case may be, we'll kind of work on that as we go into the courses next year. You can use your course in your school district thing, and I will be added to it. You won't be uploading syllabi every time for a class moving forward. The other thing is simple syllabus. So the one wonky bit. So we wanted you guys to maintain access to your school district Canvas systems so that students, can see their grade. You don't have to export it from Slick Canvas to your Canvas. Parents, I know parents aren't a big thing in CE, but at the same time, I taught at Brighton, where parents are always paying attention to kids' grades. So we wanted to make sure you stayed in your school district thing because it might be easier for you. The one little wonkiness about that is we're going to use this thing called Simple Syllabus. We've emailed about that as well. It involves a couple extra steps to make your school district Canvas work with Simple Syllabus. But either way, we're going to use that. It'll link to the Salt Lake Community College one, and it'll be a little bit more smooth and seamless. And that'll be a thing that we're going to be doing next year too. So keep in mind, I'll send out some more updates on that. Okay, last thing I want to talk about for next year. So we're here today to talk about the new courses. If we're talking about new courses, I want to keep in your minds the idea of collaboration for next year. I don't want it to be that anyone thinks that my job is to check that you're doing the new thing and get you in trouble if you're not. I would like you to think about our relationship as a liaison and you guys, your instructors moving forward, as a collaborative experience next year, where you're figuring out how to execute these new courses, incorporate things that you already like in your courses to come up with this really good new set of curriculum and questions, issues, whatever. Please reach out to me. I can reach out to the English department. I can give you feedback if you have questions about something so that we can collaborate on these things moving forward. It's not some sort of check mark, or I'm not looking to bust anybody's course that is off track or anything like that. And I put the Beatles up there because like they collaborated. Ben's here. Ben, I did this one for you. Okay, I'm gonna be Ringo. You can be John Lennon. You wanna be George? Okay, you can be George. Michelle, you're definitely Paul, because you're like pushing the schedule, whatever. Either way, think about it as a collaborative experience next year, and know that that's what I'm searching for, and that's what I'm gonna be looking for in your classes, so that we're all working together. And it may not be perfect the first time I come in the room. Maybe we have to work at that a little bit, but we're gonna get everybody on the same page so that we're doing the best work that we possibly can, okay? Okay, that's all for me. I'm gonna turn it over to the English department people. Would you mind pulling up, Leif, the other PowerPoint presentation?
While we're getting this set up, thank you all for being here. I know some of you recognize me from last year, but there are some new faces. I'm Ann Canavan. I'm one of the 2 department coordinators for primarily composition. That's about 80% of what we teach Britt. Britt is doing the smart thing and is cycling off being coordinator. Stephanie is doing the unwise thing and cycling in. So we are 2 of the primary faculty contacts for the dev shells for these courses. We've been involved in the piloting of the new 1010 and 2010 classes, and we are always available in some form or fashion. I tell my students I check my email more than a healthy person should. I don't know if I feel taller now that the podium's lower, or I don't know. But we've been engaged in, I guess, the last year, a major redesign of English 1010 and 2010. And a lot of that comes from some internal studies that we have done. All right, how do I, perfect. Indicating that we had a lot of variation, not in our CE classes in particular, but across our classes at the community college in assignments between 1010 and 2010. So we were seeing some assignments repeated between the courses. And when I say assignments, I mean major projects. So students might be doing a major research paper in 1010, get to 2010 and be like, oh, well, I just did that. I'm going to turn in that same paper again. So we also have been involved in a major gen ed discussion as a USHE system about articulation and outcomes alignment. And what we're finding out is we and our partner universities, we're not as aligned as we could have been. So that's one of the big impetuses of this change, is to make sure that when one of our partner institutions takes 1010 or 2010, that it's actually the same course that they would have taught on their campus. And so that is articulating across our partners. So transfer program outcomes, this is all in your handout. We want to have lots of times for questions. But I think these are pretty straightforward. These are our placement options that students might have if they're coming into transfer credit courses. So either they place into English 1010 or English 1010 plus English 1000, which is a co-requisite support class. And then they can either take 2010 or 2100 for their second written communications class. Pace and I have had kind of a 5-minute glancing conversation about eventually bringing 2100, which is technical writing, as a CE option in the future. So if some of you are excited about potentially working with technical writing as a CE option for your students, that would be a great conversation to have. So I'm going to ask Britt and Jim to come up and talk briefly about the 1010 redesign, because they were much more involved in that than I was. And then I will blather on about 2010. Yeah, just the arrow key. Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead. Sorry, I'm Brittany Stevenson. I'm one of the English department coordinators for about 60 more days, and then Stephanie will take over. And as Anne said, I was involved with the piloting of the new 1010 curriculum. I just want to draw your attention to the learning outcomes because those are different than what you are used to, what you have had as the learning outcomes for English 1010 previously. So I'll give you a minute to sort of look over those. I think among the newer ones are that first one, interpret college institutional discourses. The entire Unit 2 is dedicated to interpreting institutional discourses. And I think we've sort of boosted our information literacy number 6 there as well. So do you want to talk about the first assignment, then I'll do the second?
Sure. Yeah, we've really emphasized information literacy and being critical consumers of information, which I think is super important. In the first project, we're having them expand their notion of what a literacy is and to look at things that they're already literate in, that they're already experts in, and to talk about how they came to be an expert, either in like a narrative format or creating a how-to guide for people, or maybe even a hybrid between those, having a narrative introduction and then creating their how-to guide for other people to become experts in what they're already experts in. And in the pilot, this has worked out wonderfully. People talk about some of their hobbies like crocheting, or a number of Latinx students talked about their literacy in living in a conservative Mexican-American home, and things like that. So they really did a good job broadening the idea of what a literacy can be. And I think that really encourages them and sets them up to succeed in the other assignments.
All right, our second assignment is based on institutional knowledges, and this is where we're doing rhetorical analysis. So it starts, some of the early low-stakes assignments are going to look familiar with the critical reading guide and readings that they look at and break down, looking at rhetorical strategies, rhetorical situation, rhetorical appeals. Then they switch that and start looking at institutional literacies. Looking at online at the Student Writing Center, how that works, to understand how they could use the Student Reading and Writing Center. Looking at the website for a college they are interested in transferring to, or in your case, going to, and finding some part of that institutional literacy, such as admissions, or financial aid, or academic advising, and doing some rhetorical analysis of the website that they're looking at. Then they take that and they create, they have a couple of options. They can create a PowerPoint presentation, they can create a brochure, they can create another narrative that explains to an audience of students how to use that particular institutional literacy. So I think this can be really a good place where you can help your students with their college applications. I know that you have more time with your students than we do. So I know that a lot of you in the past have used the Common App scholarship applications and had students write to those prompts. So Unit 2 would be the place to do that.
Okay, and so the last project is focusing on credibility, and purposely trying to be a little less elitist than at least I have been in the past about what counts as a credible source. And in the first run through, we just had them write a paper just assessing the credibility of their sources. And they really pushed back against that because they wanted to put their voice into, because that's what they're used to and that's what they're comfortable with. So we've adapted it so that Once, I mean, they're going to be saying, who do I trust about a topic I care about and why? But then also being able to stake their own position based on, I trust these people and I tend not to trust these other people. This is what I think is the most reasonable way to approach any issue that is significant to them.
And then, as normal, we finish with an e-portfolio. The e-portfolio this time is just the research paper plus a reflection. We have 6 different reflection prompts. We want to focus on 2 of them each year. So we'll put all 6 in the dev site, but then PACE will send out, these are the 2 for this year that we're focusing on.
No, let's do it all at once.
Okay.
Because a lot of our excellent teachers teach both, so may as well get all the talky done. All right, so these are the written outcomes for 2010 and 2100. Again, they're in your packet, so I'm not going to spend too much time, going over that. But again, these are largely to bring us into alignment with our other USHE partners. So primary assignments for English 2010, we start with a mapping assignment where students are purely doing research on a topic that they're thinking about. The real goal of this is to get them away from pro-con, binary, I'm only looking for sources that fit my preconceived argument, and have them look at kind of the buffet of information that is out there for these various topics and how they fit together. So they're going to find a lot more sources than they're actually going to use in their traditional research paper, and that is by design. So getting them to do a lot of that work. Some of us are doing the kind of annotation part of this as a part of Project 1, and some people are sticking with the annotation as part of Project 2. I'm more of in the first camp, but again, you all are the experts in your class. You can kind of look at this and see where does doing that kind of work fit better for you. So Project 2, we're all familiar with it. It is our standard researched 6 to 8 page academic paper. We talk a lot about Rogerian versus Aristotelian argument, so trying to explain that there are multiple ways of reaching an audience that don't necessarily have to be directly confrontational. Project 3 is going to look pretty familiar from the old 2010. They're going to take their research paper and they're going to remix it into a different format for a different audience. We all know most people do not joyfully sit down and read research papers. So this gets them into thinking about audience. How do you meet your audience where they are? What do they already know? How can you advance that conversation? That kind of stuff. And then the e-portfolio, very much as Britt just said. So this is the matrix all together. We're not going to worry about 2100 until we have some brave teachers who are wanting to teach it as CE. So just kind of ignore that column. But that is the whole overview. And rather than switching to the slide that says Q&A, I'll leave this up. But you've had time to look through the Canvas courses, get your thoughts together. So what questions do you have? Yes?
Is it type this face-to-face or online?
I've done the 2010 face-to-face. Jim's taught the 1010 face-to-face. I'm just in the final pilot stage of writing out a face-to-face shell for 2010. And it's going to have like suggested assignment or suggested activities for each day, and then kind of the overview. Obviously, you can do what activities work well for you, but we're trying to create kind of that database where it's literally a drop-down menu that says, you could do this thing to achieve that purpose. Yep.
The online one we got, I don't know if it's just the links to any of those articles. Yeah.
They didn't work?
You have to go into student view, the way you build the assignment.
Oh, the read and annotates. Yes, that is. And I will say, I was deeply surprised. My students love the read and annotate assignments, and I was expecting nightmare. Like, I was expecting complaining and moaning, and they love it. So, but you do have to go into the files of the Canvas course to actually see those PDFs or go into student view.
Did you have some type of list, for our view of things, of like what the names of them for each of them before have it on the assignment page.
Mhm.
Because I couldn't even see what the name of the article was until I went into the.
Okay, was that 1010 and 2010 just for my reference?
I only noticed it in 2010, but.
Okay. Yep, and are one of you helping me with the notes on this? Because if you know anything about me, if I don't see it written down, it is dead to me. Yeah. So the question was, just restating it for our online audience, the second one was, it's very hard to tell which PDF goes to which read and annotate assignment unless you switch over to the student view. So we'll work on getting that cleaned up so that the files match the assignment. Yes?
When you do go into student view, though, the name of the assignment, at least in 1010, is almost always it has the name of the article, the name of the assignment. It's just not clear that that is the title of the article necessarily, but it's there. Also, though, not in the read and annotate one, but just often when there's like a window in the instructions that's like, watch this video or follow this link, many of those links are broken or not responding.
And that's in 1010 and 20. I wonder if that's a function of when we were copying it as an export, because they've been working on my end, so we will double check what's going on there.
So in 2010 right now, like in the course I've been using, even when I click on like a link to the notebook prompts page that's
Yes.
like a little course or like their website,
Mhm.
that doesn't function. And then
Yes.
I clicked on it again within the new shell course, and it didn't work either. So like,
There shouldn't be an external notebook site for the new shell. That was one of the things I was excited to get rid of.
whatever I clicked on, what I thought was the notebook thing, like, took me to a link that didn't work.
They told us at the beginning, don't link.
Yeah,
Oh,
It was just.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind.
former colleagues who designed that site had it housed in an off-site, off-campus website. They have moved on to other opportunities, and yeah, I have been dealing with those fires for a
Then
while.
there must have been one link or something that I clicked on within the new shell course, but still navigated it.
I will track that down and kill it with fire.
If I find it again, I'll let you know.
Yes, I do not at all mind getting emails like that. I'm going to be the touch point for 2010, and Stephanie is going to be the touch point for 1010. So if you're seeing those links, then by all means, let us know. And it can be helpful if you let us know if it's doing it in the application, in a browser, what situation you were in, just so we know if there's an incompatibility thing, because I don't know about you, but I've discovered the Canvas app is, well, it rhymes with app.
Hey, Anne, we have a couple online questions too.
Okay, yeah.
If we want to hit one of those. Lindy McKay asked, will the department still use the threshold concepts?
The threshold concepts are implicitly embedded, but they're not going to be an explicit feature anymore. So if you like them and they resonate with you, feel free to make them explicit, but in terms of the shell, they're not going to be explicit anymore.
Which is to follow up about the readings. I think you've answered that question, so.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. I think my summer will be squashing bugs.
I have an issue with YouTube videos as well. I can't really do it away, but my district clamps down YouTube. So at least on a teacher side, it would be nice to have the assignment just the URL. So
Mhm.
I can just tell my students, I just use your phone.
Okay.
And then they can go online and copy and paste it and use their phone. It's not blocked.
Okay. And the question was, for those online, that YouTube may be restricted in some districts. How do we want to work around this? And it may be as simple as putting just the bare URLs so that people could type in and navigate it that way. But we will think about that, because I didn't realize those technological restrictions existed, which is why it's so great to hang out with y'all.
We had another one. So Michelle Marshall asked, well, it's kind of a statement. She said, so much seemed to encourage all work to be done in Word. Like, how would one deal with that if it was on Chromebooks, because they can't download stuff on Word?
Mhm. I think that's a simple language change, because Chrome can, or Google Docs can just as easily save as a .doc, docx as any other format. So that may just be a quick formatting issue. Yes,
A logistical question regarding Canvas talking to Skyward.
I'm not going to be able to answer that because I don't know what Skyward is.
Can we change the names of the assignments so when we put them on Skyward, they don't just say remanage.
Absolutely.
So we can change names?
Yes. No, absolutely. You may change the name of assignments to whatever best works for you. You can substitute readings in and out. If you have a favorite reading that you think is more effective, by all means, feel free. If you do have a favorite reading, send it to us too, so that we can add it to the kind of list of options, because, 20, 30, 50 heads are better than one. So,
In the department meeting the other day, some of the adjuncts asked about if they had an assignment that they liked, they were going to get it, they could submit it for approval, and then it goes into some sort of like marketplace, storehouse, whatever, where other adjuncts know that those are pre-approved and they could pull those.
yes,
Is the same thing work for the high school instructors? They could do the basic same
yes.
idea? Okay.
So if you have a way of getting at a particular outcome that you think is going to work better for your students where they are, then you can either send it directly to PACE or directly to me and Stephanie and Lynn as our department co-chair. And we will take a look at those and we'll make sure that it's fitting what we've agreed to in terms of articulation. And we're going to be very supportive about that. I don't want you to think of us as gatekeeping. And so then we can add it to kind of that food metaphor again, which I love, like that sort of menu of options for getting to that same place. I think I saw your hand up first, and then we'll go over here.
So, knowledge was changing last year, we were trying to pull this, we had other things in the health supplement, or that we felt would be good as a high school class to do that, but it sounds like if I want to do that, I have to tell you I'm doing that, like, send that first, or why is it doing that?
This is more for major projects rather than daily activities. Daily activities is good for us to be able to feed our database and give people those options. But if you decide to come up with an entirely new project for the first one in 2010, that's something we would want to be aware of and be able to have input on, because we want our CE students to actually be able to articulate to the partner institutions they want to go to. Because we could run into an issue where a partner institution says, oh, well, you did this in 1010, that doesn't match our 1010, we're not taking that credit. So that's really the conversation we're trying to avoid. Yes?
So basically, just if us need your approval or something, it would involve us swapping out one of these.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So the much better than I said reiteration, if you want to swap out something that you're seeing on the screen, run it by us. If you want to swap out what you're doing in the day-to-day, it'd be great if we knew so that we could share your brilliant idea. Otherwise, you are experienced teachers. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. What other questions have we? Yes.
This is a 10-10 question about project 2. So in the course, there are 2 parts to it. One is they create their infographic or how to navigate a literacy, institutional literacy. And then 2 is they write like a scholarship essay or the equivalent. So should their how-to be like related to the essay that they're gonna write, or are those 2 things totally unrelated?
So the question was, there's a 2-part to project 2, just reiterating for online before I turn you over to Britt.
And we took out that second part after piloting it. It felt too squishy to us, like we're cramming too much into Unit 2. You all may have time because you have 20 weeks with them, is that right? And we only have 16, so it might make sense for you to keep it. But we took it out after the first semester of piloting just because it was too cram-packed and then students weren't having a success with it. But to answer your question, if you do choose to keep that second part, the writing of a resume or a scholarship application, which I think could be really useful for high school students, it does not have to be connected to what they do for part 1. It can be completely separate.
But they ought to be weighted equally?
We had them weighted equally, yes.
And if you want to adjust the weights to some degree to meet your individual needs or the amount of instruction time, that is something that it's good for us to know, because it might be something we would want to adapt more widely. But as long as it's in that ballpark, we're happy. Yes.
If we wait to do college essays, when you just suggest we do college essays, that's too late for you, Bob.
Okay. I don't
Flip-flop
see any
either one,
reason
too?
you couldn't.
Absolutely, you can flip-flop them.
No, absolutely, because you all have a much better idea of what deadlines and what needs. So to reiterate, the question was, Project 2 in 1010, the way it's set up, the deadline for the college applications would have passed. So could you flop those around so that you would have timely applications with feedback? And of course, that would be wonderful. Yes.
I was looking at the syllabus documents that are in there, and one of those parts in the 1010 and 2010 one, like where it's talked about the late work policy, and they were very contradicting to each other.
You can adjust them how you see fit for your
And
classroom.
I was just curious, if like that was supposed to be the same.
Yep. So the question was, the existing late work policies in the syllabi between 1010 and 2010 don't line up. Those are entirely customizable to how you prefer to run a classroom.
And then the other question I had that was in connection to the syllabus was, are the prerequisites for 1010 changing? Because it seemed like it didn't say, it said whatever the 099 course and or placement. Is the ACT 18 and higher reading still part of that?
Lynn, do you know? So the question is about ACT placement into 1010.
This is like a huge conversation that's happening statewide.
There's a microphone coming.
Oh, sorry. This is a big conversation that's happening statewide about like what scores and things like that. So I would say stick with what you're doing, question mark. Because I know that that's something that we're supposed to be talking about.
And part of why I asked that is because like when they go to register for 1010, that was sometimes, an issue, right? And so that was why I asked about when I saw the change.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Pace and I can talk about it, and Pace might know more.
So they changed the placement test a little while ago. And they've also changed some of the prerequisites for 1010. My understanding is that it would still be the same, which is an 18 reading section ACT score. But there's been other ways to get into 2010. And they've added some of those in. I don't really know like the short list of here's exactly what they need because of some of this indiscrepancy.
Do you think that with the 1010 one, would everyone need to take the placement test?
No, that's still not the expectation.
That's why I'm not seeing the ACT part there.
No, that's moving in the wrong direction. That's making it harder. So I'll see if I can get like the short version of that and send it out. But a lot of students, you guys know, will pass AP Lang, the qualifying score, or the 18 on the reading section, and then jump into 2010. And it's not necessarily that everyone has to take a placement test for 1010. Yeah. And I have a quick online question.
Yes.
Is there an anticipated time the in-person Canvas shells will be sent out?
I know because I'm actively involved in the 2010 shell, we're hoping to have things clean and presentable by the end of May. And then you'll be able to, we'll do what Pace did for you all last time, so he can export the course to you. I know you're not allowed to have access to your Canvas courses in a super speedy manner, but I know that 2010 should be pretty presentable. Obviously, feedback, there will be a few things, tidy up, but it should be pretty presentable by the end of May. So
And I'll be super annoying to all these people at the table here and get the shells as soon as I can and get them sent out to everybody so that you can have them and think about them over the summer if you'd like, before the fall and come back in.
And Pace has really been advocating for you all getting information as quickly as possible. He's been doing a really wonderful job trying to be a proactive liaison to get you the things that you need. And if you feel like anything's late, it's probably my fault. Feel like anything's untimely and well, Thank that guy. Yes.
I think I'm a little confused about the prerequisites.
Mhm.
I was under the assumption that passing the AP Lang test was a qualifier for 2010. Is it a qualifier to get into 1010? Or, I think I just misheard.
Yep. So the question is about what exactly is a qualification for getting into 1010 versus 2010, and I think PACE has the most accurate information
So
on that.
we were saying, I'm not exactly sure if they're going to hold with the ACT thing, but so the passing the AP Lang would be a qualifier to get into 2010. That's not necessary for 1010. 1010, the qualifiers would be the minimum ACT reading score or passing English 11, which is a hard one. We have some sophomores trying to get into 1010 right now, and that's not working. So that's still a hard one, but yes, it would just be for 2010 AP Lang.
Yeah. And I can say, as somebody who paid for grad school by scoring AP Lang in the summer, for a lot of years and a lot of soul crushing meals, it's very equivalent to 1010, but not 2010. So, yes. So the question is seniors taking 1010?
So this is all the new things I've learned as a liaison this year. Legally, we cannot require that a certain grade take a certain class. It's like a law. So if we said only seniors can take it, that's illegal for us to do that. So what it is like they have to have completed the junior level proficiency in English to then take it. So we have like one or two very motivated students who took Lang their 10th grade year instead of their junior year, which meant that then they could qualify for 1010 as a junior. But like, there's a whole series of things. It's not just for seniors, but they will have needed to complete the proficiency of a junior, which is either like English 11 or AP Lang, to then qualify for 1010. But we can't say it's only for seniors.
Or do they have to finish that and have the qualifying?
That's what I need to figure out. I don't know exactly where it settles on the ACT.
And I suspect a lot of it has to do with our partner institutions as well, in terms of where they accept incoming freshmen for their composition sequence and what they do or do not want to do. Because sometimes we get told by our partner institutions, and sometimes we are collaborators. Other questions? Yes.
My question's about rubrics.
Yes.
I say, I'm wondering if them is in the correct place, or if you don't add them, you want us to add them.
In 2010, there should have been rubrics for every major assignment and most of the formative ones. The read and annotates do not, and we're going to put those in, I believe, before fall. And there's also been a lot of discussion about moving everything to a point system instead of complete incomplete. So the rubric for the read and annotate would be, do you have 5 annotations? Good job. Do you have 3? And I think you all know how the rest of that story goes. But beyond that, everything else should have a rubric, which of course you can feel free to adjust to your needs. So, yes.
So, what about maybe some, like, model projects? Between the different ones?
Yes, I've been collecting some model projects from my 2010 pilot, and I can get those. I need to get them anonymized from my students from this semester, and then I can send them to PACE as files that we can put in there. And we're also going to, we've been working with e-learning, which is why the Canvas course is way prettier than anything I would come up with. But it's, do we have it in kind of like a sub-file in the files of examples, or do we make it more student-facing, and then you could kind of, publish or unpublish the ones you want them to see? But we are creating those repositories from those classes, and I'm sure that's the case for 1010 too. Yes. You had your hand up a second ago, and
That was basically my second question. I would like to see some student samples so that I can know exactly what's expected.
Yes, and I will say we do offer a narrative mind mapping option for 2010. Most of my students do the thought bubbles, in fact, or like kind of the webbing sort of representation. I've not had anybody do a narrative yet. I look forward to the opportunity to see it, but I sure don't have any examples of it yet. But beyond that, we do have a lot of good examples, and students have been responding really positively to these projects. Yes, ma'am.
Kind of aside away, how about the questions? So we were told, hey, send us out an email, let us know that we could, those of us still teach the current content we're teaching and use next year to prepare, so we didn't have to use our summers to prepare for 10. And then to move on to the new 2010. Except that if we're gonna teach the old 10, at least the curriculum that I teach, yours, you know, your solid communities, they will be doubling up on some of the work. So.
Britt, what do you think the assignments, where do we think?
Rhetorical analysis, because they do a rhetorical analysis right in 2010.
Mm-mm. No, they analyze their sources in terms of the annotation and credibility, so summary and analysis, but we don't do a rhetorical analysis in 2010.
I always got a doubling up here from the current 10
Yeah.
into the new 20. It's doubling up the research. That's
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering, can I teach the old 2010 too, so I don't have a doubling up? And so then that would be the 25,
It's a terrifying thought.
Yeah.
So right now, I'm going to pass that one off to Lynn. So the question is, how quickly do we have to adopt the new courses? You're the highest ranking officer on the ship, Lynn.
I mean, I would guess that it depends on our articulation, but you know, I mean, those courses have been
Articulated
transferring
for
before,
years.
so
Yeah.
it's not like, you
I
know,
think we can
mean,
be
I
pretty
would say-
flexible on it.
I would say if that's what Pace said.
And Pace and I did have that conversation, so I do remember that, yes, because initially we thought we weren't going to be able to get these courses to you until like late July, and we're like, well, that's unreasonable. But I think we can be pretty flexible for a year with the understanding. So like you might go through the shell and pull assignments from the new 10-10, 2010 as you're teaching out of the old shell, especially like notebooks that are gone with the wind. So that might be the kind of thing that you might start kind of slowly integrating into, but we can be flexible for a year, I think. And if my boss tells me different, I was never here.
So I was fighting for that because I didn't want you guys to get this huge new thing, have to do it all over the summer. You're not getting paid over the summer, your contract's not, and then come back in. So the fall was our bit of flexibility. To put it in perspective, all the on-campus instructors have to hit it in the fall. There's no wiggle room for them. So we got the fall as the wiggle room, but you're absolutely right. If you teach old 1010 into new 2010 in the spring, there are some conflicts and stuff. And so it's kind of like multiplying problems. If we cut it just in the fall and you had to do it in the fall, it would make everything a lot cleaner. So it's kind of like a negotiation where like, okay, if you want to do it in the fall, you're going to have to probably do a little bit more work in the spring to customize it. We don't want like then to blend into the spring. And now we're teaching this like weird amalgam of the course. It sounds like you guys have more flexibility than I was expecting that we had. But if you want to do that, you can do that. I don't know of like a school like Corner where they do 2010 in the fall. I don't know exactly how that all works because that could even be more complicated to try to figure out how that whole sort of thing is going to go. Just know that if you want the flexibility, it might be a little bit more on the back end that you have to negotiate. If you want to load that for the summer and come in, then you would have not as many conflicts for the school year, right?
And from what I understand from my colleagues who've been working so hard on 1010, 2010 is not that different from the old 2010. There's not a huge amount different, except the big emphasis on research and inquiry and not just going to a database and saying, who agrees with me on gun control? So that idea of kind of an inquiry-based mindset, breaking out that research into its own project, that's the biggest difference in 2010. I look like I made it, or you look like I've made it worse.
No, you don't made it worse. If that's the way I'm supposed to be teaching 2010, I'm doing it wrong.
Right, because like I'm
It's
teaching,
totally different.
different mediums and, you know.
Well, that's the third project, is different mediums and
Right, and they're
re,
working on, like one local issue that they expanded on
Mhm.
the entire semester from their very first narrative to the end, and so.
we don't insist on the local issue, but if you've had good success with that and students respond well to it, you absolutely could. But my students stick with the same topic all semester.
I guess what I'm asking, or what I'm hoping for, is that I am not going to be ready to, like, have everything ready to go for 10-10 this fall.
Okay.
I'm having time to work on it now, and
Mhm.
my summer is precious.
Yes.
I get so burned out, right?
Mhm.
And so the idea of moving into the new 2010 shell is super stressful because I won't know all that well yet too, but because of the duplication things. That's why I really, I'm hoping that I can just do the old 2010, the old shell, and then during this upcoming school year, I'll be working on the new stuff so that when the new fall hits, I'm ready to go, hit the ground ready for both semesters.
We can work with that. The old 10-10, 2010 have been transferring. It's a pain point now, but I don't think it's an unendurable one. So if you need the year, we can live with the year, with the understanding that starting we don't want to say a 25, 26 year, that we will all be using this shell. And quite frankly, I like the new 2010 a lot better than I like the old one, in part because we have a lot fewer external links from that shell. So there's a lot less to go wrong. Other questions?
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Pace, is there anything online?
No, we're good online?
It's 4:00. I bet we could all go home if Pace lets us.
Nope, we're gonna sit. No, I'm just kidding, absolutely.
Well, thank you all for your time and thank you for the work that you do. We do genuinely appreciate it. And I do want to be as approachable as, well, you want me to be. If you're more comfortable working with Pace first, feel free. Otherwise, feel free to send me emails. I believe all my contact information is in that packet. So, thank you.
Okay, so if you're here in person, underneath the packet should be your stipend paperwork. There's a box lid back there on the back table. Yes, please hold that up. Oh, I thought you were gonna hold the box up. Yes, good. Put those in on the way out. That is going to A, get you stipends and get you paid. B, that'll also track attendance for everybody who was in the physical meeting. Everyone that was online, I have a list of all those instructors. I will email you out the stipend paperwork online. Complete that electronically, send it back to me, and you will get paid for the stipend. For the instructors that weren't able to make it, they're gonna watch the recording of this, complete some stuff that goes along with it, and they'll get paid for this time as well. Okay, guys, we're wrapping up the school year. You got any questions? You run into any issues with Maya SLCC or anything like that, please reach out to me. I've got a few final class observations that I'm gonna be doing, so watch out for a couple emails. And then we'll hit it again in the fall and start working with new stuff, new things, all that new fun stuff. Thank you so much for coming.